I am Dr. Lum. I am a pediatrician and founder of Generational Wellbeing. Really passionate about helping parents create sustainable, healthy habits for their kids and for their families. And I will be joined today by Bibi Jamieson, who is a psychotherapist and a counselor. And today we will be talking about communicating to raise resilient kids. And when we talk about resilience, we're talking about the ability to handle life's ups and downs. And we know over the past 2 years, um, life has not been the same. So many changes, so many ups and downs, a lot of things going around in the news. And just like we are affected, our kids are affected too. So today, really, the goal is really to provide you with a few practical tips on how to really help you give your kids the tools they need to be able to deal with life's ups and downs. Really helping them to be able to label their emotions and manage those big emotions and problem solving skills and stuff. And just really helping them out in this time, knowing that with ups and downs, there will be times where we mess up or make mistakes, but the mistakes are not necessarily failures, but really tools or really a point where you can either redirect or we look at it as points on the curve to give us data points that give us information on how to move forward from there.
She's here. Hi, Phoebe.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you
Okay.
clearly. But thank you for joining me. How about you
Mhm.
start by introducing yourself and then we get started?
Okay, cool. So I'm Bibi Jamieson. I am a therapist and I am working today from my offices in Richmond where I see individuals and couples. I'm a mother daughter coach as well, and my practice is called Restore to Love, which is obviously my handle. I'm very passionate about helping people come back to their core center of love.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you, Bibi. And the work you're doing is truly amazing. So let's get started. I know we're both busy and we want to make
Hmm.
sure I honor people's time and give them value for the time spent. Before you came in, I was just really explaining that resilience means, helping our kids handle the ups and downs of life, really helping them manage those big emotions that come through and problem solving and stuff because life is going to happen. So
Yeah.
rather than wrapping them up in a bubble that is going to be bust eventually, we
Hmm.
have to rather really give them the tools to that.
Yeah.
I will preface this by saying in clinic, I see a lot of kids who will come in and it's hard for them. They say they can't really confide with their parents because they feel like the parents do not listen to them. Hence, the issue of the communication, where it's like,
Hmm.
why didn't you talk to your mom or your dad about that?
Hmm.
There's this tendency for teenagers. I'm not sure. I know you do mother-daughter coaching. I'm sure you
Yeah.
talk to a lot of teenagers too
Hmm.
who feel like the parents are not really listening or they don't see them. What's your
Yeah.
take on that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that is very present in the work I do with adolescents and even the adults as well.
Yeah.
I think connection is a very key ingredient in building resilience. But here's the thing, if the child has no voice because all they want to do is please you, and
Right.
so they just want to do the things that they think is going to make you happy, then they can't connect with you. They can't tell you their true dreams or fears or aspirations because there's no space. You're not giving them any space for that. And also, I don't think that parents teach their children to be emotionally congruent. So when I do work with them, we talk about meta emotions. So some emotions are not welcome in the home. So it's like if you are angry, because something happened in school. If you know it was a teacher that made you angry, especially if you're from a typical African household, there's no way you're going to tell your parents that you are angry. So the parents are not making it easy for children to come and say, this is how I feel, because there are only certain emotions that they allow their children to show. But the flip side is that the parents then show their own children any emotion that they choose. So there's a disconnect, you know. So that connection is really, really key. Like if you give your child the space to be able to label their emotions, to talk about what matters to them, not to judge it, that we are all human. You know, you can feel angry, you can feel anxious, you can feel fearful, you can feel joyful. If all you do is celebrate, for example, their achievements or their joy, they're going to learn that that is the only thing they can share with you. You know, so yeah, I agree with what
Absolutely.
you said. Yeah.
Absolutely. And when they're going through a hard time, the tendency then is for them to seek outside help,
Mm-hmm.
or other people to kind of help them out. Another example is a teenager who ended up trying out drugs, but because, again, like you said, you're not able to feel those emotions. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he felt like there was something going on, but
Mm-hmm.
again, because he could not express himself, he didn't know
Mm-hmm.
how to label his emotions. He
Mm-hmm.
could not talk to his parents, so he, of course, asked for help from another teenager who, of course, offered help again,
Mm-hmm.
with something that will help him feel better.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, just, being there, but then allowing them to feel those emotions will really
Mm-hmm.
go a long way to take away the pain or the consequences that come from the behavior. Again, when we look at that behavior, sometimes we want to label it as, this is a bad kid, I can't believe you did that. But rather than looking at it as red flags to say, why, I'll go back to why did
Mm-hmm.
this happen? Like, how can
Mm-hmm.
we go back to redirect and change the course? Because life is connected, and the past is always going to be connected to the present and to the
Mm-hmm.
future. So rather than leaving in the past, but it's going back to say, why did he go back and make that decision? Why didn't he come to me and just trying
Mm-hmm.
to figure out and really help them out, to label it. So
Yeah.
really, rambling around, but going back to say the behaviors are red flags and also a part of communicating, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
trying drugs, whether it's retreating into the room, whether it's being tearful, or even down to the toddlers, whether it's just acting out. Those are
Mm-hmm.
all ways that they
That,
are trying to communicate. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Our kids try to tell us so much. And the thing is we we judge their emotions as well.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about the boy you said who decided to go and try out drugs or whatever. I can just imagine, like when I speak to parents, it's like, but what does he have to be stressed out about? What does this?
Yes.
The thing is, we need to come into a place of empathy and remember what it's like. I remember, I mean, they're all doing their exams now. I have a few students in as clients, and I remember what it was like at that time. Not only is it stressful because your teachers and the school are putting pressure on you, your family is putting pressure on you, your body is changing. Everybody is saying, if you don't do this, you're going to end up like homeless or jobless. And, as a child, you want a good future as well. And it's scary, So I think it's very important for parents to come into that place of empathy to say they don't know either. And it's very, very scary for them. Also, that case study you just gave me, another thing that I was thinking about is it's not always just about how we directly communicate with our children, it's how we communicate about other people. So if you
Mm-hmm.
come from a home where the adults around you are very critical of other people, are very judgmental, look at this one's son did this one's daughter. You're telling them that there is no room for error. There is no room for you to experiment, to be anyhow. They are already going to feel a sense of shame because they hear you talking about other people. And if you don't have empathy for them, then they are going to deduce that you absolutely will have no empathy for me. If they decide to make mistakes, and nobody decides to make mistakes, but if they, or just try out life, it's always going to come with an element of shame and secrecy, because you're
Mm-hmm.
surrounded by these adults who just continually judge, criticize, and label others for living their lives. So if you have a home where someone heard them saying, oh, someone's son um, you know became a drug abuser, and as a parent you can look at that with empathy and like, oh, that must really, or he must be hurting, or poor boy, or what can we do to help, something like that. It's not, people think that it is then giving their own children a license to go and do it. No, what it means is it's telling their children how to be empathic to each other's, and not to like judge themselves so harshly all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and that really goes to the core of the work you do, because with that, when you're critical and stuff, it gives that sense of lack of self-worth or
Mm-hmm.
unworthiness, and it's hard for you to love yourself for who you
Mm-hmm.
are if you're constantly being critical and judgmental. You're
Mm-hmm.
obviously going to be critical and judgmental of
Mm-hmm.
yourself, and that comes out and shows out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about like what our parents spend their time talking to us about is usually how we build our self-worth. And that's where
Mm-hmm.
this thing about congruence and incongruence comes in. So if, for example, you come from a Christian home and you were taken to church every Sunday, and and the Christian principles, love, forgiveness, don't be a hypocrite, all these things. That's what you see. And then if your parents are then doing something different, your self-worth is not going to be based on those values. Your self-worth is going to be that actually, if I get all A's in my school work, that is more important than love, joy, peace, forgiveness. If I drive a Mercedes by the time I'm 21, that's what matters. If I fail in school or at sports or in whatever way, then I am worth nothing, because we have these so-called Christian principles, but what the parents are demonstrating and talking to us about, that they're telling us that this is what you have to do, this is what you have to do, that's what they build their self-worth on. So when they now, start getting into older adolescence, they can't achieve these things. They don't have those other family values or Christian values to fall back on, which it just negates the whole point. Why did they go to church every Sunday? Do you know what I mean? It's like you say
Right.
that you have these principles, but actually what you're talking about, what you're spending your money on for them, what you are demanding from them has nothing to do with those principles. These are things that can come and go. It doesn't
Right.
make you any more or less of a person.
Mm-hmm.
Your grades, your status, all those things, they are all man-made, and they all depend on other people's approval.
Absolutely. And everything you listed so far are outside approval as opposed to internal, like that knowing from the inside, which usually will lead eventually over time to hopelessness, which is one thing I see is one of the biggest when we screen for depression, we screen for risk of suicide in adolescents and stuff. Hopelessness is one of the reason why most kids will, take it up to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not worth it. I'm not capable of
Mm-hmm.
pleasing you, because it's like there's some divide within me. The things I want to do and the things that are expected of me are so different, where it's just like it's hopeless. I
Yeah.
don't want to do it anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
just that congruent is really
Mm-hmm.
important, especially for just, not only just the resilient and mental well-being, emotional well-being and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's It's really sad when I hear you say those words, hopelessness. I don't know if you can see on my wall, I've got faith, hope, love. And that's what I try to do here every day. I'm just trying to, to give them that hope, because we shape our children's world so much, But something I say to parents as well is things like, to combat this, to help them be truly emotionally resilient. And that's why I contacted you to say, what do you mean by emotional resilience? Because parents come to me and they say, I want my child to be emotionally resilient, because maybe the child is down about something like what you see, and they're refusing to see that. They just want us to make them into robots that can go into a stressful world and not feel anything. They don't want to listen to the signals that are there. And that's not the type of emotional resilience we want, because they will break as we would if we are adults.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that can help with that as well is simple little things like a gratitude practice. So if it's saying grace or whatever, but teaching them to have gratitude in all circumstances, it helps to remove that perfectionism, that all or nothing, that our happiness is not dictated by the circumstances or how many hours you spend playing your games or whatever. We choose to be joyful. Practicing gratitude with your family is a really great way to eventually build emotional resilience. And another one I was thinking about is getting them involved and connected to a different array of people, not to overprotect them and over shelter them, because we a lot of our parents are coming from a place of survival, and sometimes we can overcompensate. We can put our children in a bubble. I'm guilty of doing that sometimes myself. We want to rescue everything, but if we kind of gently expose our children to a more colorful world, a world where not everyone has the same sneakers as you, or even something like helping in a soup kitchen or something like that, just to know that, what, some people are here, and maybe you're here, and some people are here as well. Like, not everybody is, I was going to say not everybody's equal, but you know what I mean? Like, everyone has different circumstances in life.
Right.
And that
There are
doesn't make
different
them any
seasons.
more or less of a person. Yeah,
Right.
that's what I mean. But if a child is too sheltered and you only see people who can engage in life the way you do, when you enter the real world, you're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to integrate. You know.
Right, absolutely right. And just to add on to what you said, it's just like the idea that we have to fix it, because in
Mm,
the culture today is that immediate gratification where just fix it. I have a flat tire, just replace it, put it in there, and I'm ready to go.
mhm,
My device goes out, you replace it, and it's like this quick fix where we feel like when we come to our kids, if
mhm,
they're having a problem, just give me medicine to fix it, or just tell me
mhm,
what I need to do to fix it.
mhm,
But as humans, we're more complex than anything else out there.
mhm,
And no two children are the same too. So the
mhm,
way you listen and communicate to one kid will be different from the next kid. So
yeah,
comparing again is absolutely different. So rather than trying or striving for a quick fix, it's more of a journey. It's
mhm,
like, okay, redirect. You have this is not working well. What can we do to get to the desired destination?
mhm,
Which means that as we start taking a step towards whichever destination we desire, that has to come between you and the kid.
mhm,
Because my goals in life, so my core values are different from both kids, or
mhm,
each kid's core values.
mhm,
Even though we birth them and we're the parents,
mhm,
there are still humans with innate needs and stuff. So
mhm,
our goal is to direct them and help them to be the best people they were meant to be. which means directing them one step at a time. It is difficult to see your kid hurt. You want to
Mm-hmm.
hold them and cuddle them and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, but you have to be able to let go and allow them to
Mm.
take that step. But
Yeah.
your job is really leading from behind and saying, yeah, there's a pothole down there. You may want to
Mm-hmm.
take a step to the left or take a
Mm-hmm.
step to the right, or else you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna fall. And sometimes they won't listen and they fall. But even when you fall, I'm there to pick you up and let you,
Mm.
lead you back on track,
Mm-hmm.
rather than reactive, where like, I told you this was gonna
Mm-hmm.
happen. Why didn't you listen to me?
Mm.
And
Mm.
then the kids will not come back to you again the next time because of that reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. Safe risks. Safe.
Right.
Because a lot of the kids I see are perfectionists and they are so scared to step out of the box that has been created for them. And I think it's for the very reason that you just explained as well. And the flip side to that as well is, um, sometimes we get very dramatic parents. So something small happens and it's like, wow. So, you have to think, I mean, if you remember what it's like with babies, that co-regulation, if your heartbeat stills, theirs stills as well, you know?
Mhm.
And if the child, because you do have some kids that are quite anxious and jittery because everything it's like, but then when you observe their parents as well react. So everything is, a big deal. And they
Yeah,
don't have the capacity to have that emotional regulation to teach them how to regulate. So, you know, a lot of the work, we have to work with the parents.
yes,
We have to work with the parents. Have you seen when a toddler falls over in the playground or something and they pause before they cry? They
yes,
pause. They're like, and then they look to the parent. And depending on how the parent reacts, the child reacts. They
exactly.
might be about to laugh and then and then they cry, or they might be about to cry and then they laugh. So I think there is no, for any parent that comes to me and says teach my child this, and that's why I do, part of the reason I do mother-daughter work as well, this is something that we as parents need to learn and unlearn together with our children. They didn't just
Right.
wake up one morning and decide that they don't want to talk to anybody anymore, or that they have constant headaches. This is years in the making, and
Hmm.
we've done our best. As you know, I'm not trying to shame parents here, but we can learn with them. We can
Exactly.
do it together.
Do it together.
Mm,
And when we say do it together, what are some practical things where when we're talking about do it together and
mm,
emotional regulation? I know we're talking about communication, and I'll start by saying, right, really being present and listening.
mm,
Listening is really key, because sometimes, again, we go back to listen to fix. Sometimes
mm,
they don't want you to, they just want to know that you're
mm,
there. Sometimes it's just listening to say,
mm,
I'm here, I hear
mm.
you, regardless of whatever it is. What other tips would you say when it comes to like really connecting with your kids to help them?
Um, Problem solving.
Yes.
You know, like if there, it's, I guess it's the same thing that you've just said, but in the instances where there is a problem that needs a solution, rather than us just say, okay, here's what we're going to do, is actually to bring them into that decision making process, and figure out what are the pros, what are the cons, because it helps them to feel that actually they have a voice. Obviously we are the directors and hopefully we know what they need best, but just making these big decisions without pulling them in, that can be very difficult. Um, Another thing is breathing.
Hmm.
Honestly, I mean, it is something I started with my daughter maybe when she was like 4 years old. If she was upset or whatever, and we have our little 1, 2, 3, breathe, or whatever, and
Yeah.
that's part of that co-regulation. So I think if your teenager won't think that you're too cringy for doing so, go and do something like a breathwork class together or yoga, or just sit on the sofa and do it together. because when the child is not with you, they know how to do that for themselves, or an exercise class, something that gets your body moving, that creates, all those feel good hormones or whatever, to do it together. And there was another one. I've talked about gratitude as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last one is a question of faith and spirituality as well. So I'm Christian. I'd be talking to God, but whoever's listening, whatever you put your faith in, is to know that these children are ultimately designed by a creator. And as parents, sometimes we can get in the way of what God's will is for them, So I
Right.
honestly don't know. I've done therapy, I've read the books, and I've seen everything, but I don't know how I would do parenting if I couldn't pray. You,
Right.
to know that you are not the master of this child's destiny. This child, there is a plan for this child. There is a purpose for this child, and you have to trust God. You have to ask. I ask God continually, do not let me make decisions for my child that is going to steer him off the path that you've put him on, because we try and make a mini me. And like you said earlier, my child is different to me, so I think that spiritual aspect is very, very important, because you have to come to parent your child from a place of love and faith, not a place of fear. If you're doing it from fear, that's when that emotional, the irregulation occurs. You're fearful all the time, so you're angry, you're disconnected. So spiritual practices is definitely something that I encourage, and it's something that you can do with your child as well, and not from a place of forcing them to go to church. You demonstrate it by how you live your life, and that's where that gratitude thing comes in as well. Like, no matter what happens, we are thankful. We are here. It is not the end of the world. We can always find a way to be thankful.
Absolutely. And I like the way you ended it, saying not necessarily going to church, but you being that leading word, right? You
Mm,
being that example, because the kids,
mm,
they're watching you, and
mm,
they'll end up either doing or running away from the things they see you doing,
mm.
because you're the greatest influence. And
Yeah.
when it comes to even with the breathing exercises and
Mm,
stuff, there's never too early to, even the toddlers, like you said, you started with your kid when she was 4 years old. The
mm,
toddlers are really great with it. When I
mm,
start doing deep breathing, or I want to listen to their lungs,
mm,
I don't have to say anything.
mm,
I just start breathing. And before
mm,
you know, they're doing it too. So
mm,
they kind of, can
mm,
sense it, and they kind
mm,
of breathe to the same tone and stuff. It's like,
mm,
yeah, you can take deep breathing. And I usually will start then telling the parents, if they're
mm,
having a really hard time, sometimes just holding their hands and just breathe. And
mm,
before you know, they're
mm.
calming themselves down. And it's not like a, oh, I'm going to do it one time and fix it. It's a journey. It's
Yeah.
like each day, the first day may not be perfect, but just, keep doing it, and consistently, before you know it, your child is telling you to breathe.
Mm,
And that's what my daughter did once.
mm,
It was like, breathe, mommy, breathe. Especially when she's done something she knows I'll probably be upset
mm.
about it. She, breathe, can you breathe?
Yeah.
Because yeah, so they watch you to do it, and
Mm,
they will come back and remind you to calm
mm,
down and stuff, because this is a partnership thing. This
mm,
is a relationship. It's
mm,
not like a domineering thing. It's we're
mm.
growing together.
Yeah. I realize that most of a large part of my clientele are female adolescents or younger women.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, they are the firstborn of their families.
Yep.
They are perfect students, They're real high achievers. And the common theme I find is that they are parentified from a very young age. And I want, if any parent is listening to this, be careful when you say, your daughter, she's very mature, isn't she? She's very good. She's very, and that's what you glorify. And there's no room for her when she does childlike things, because they're only acting like adults because they're adapting to what you think, to what they think that, is required of them, And the truth is, a child who is that mature, a child who you are relying on to help you to perform the parenting role. And I know it's not easy, it can be very hard for that child, for that firstborn high achiever, the one that you boast about at your dinner parties. These are the people that come into my office. Let them be children. Let them be children, because eventually they break and they don't even have the words for it. And what happens is that the parent then becomes disappointed or shocked. Like, all of a sudden, whenever I get people calling me, they talk about the child. They're like, he got all A's in his A levels last year and she did this. They feel like it comes out of nowhere. There's been this pressure building because you refuse to, because of circumstances. Again, I'm not shaming parents, but to allow that child to be a child who is learning. And, we learn through play, through mistakes and all that. The child begins to adapt and act like a mini adult. It's too much for the child. Be careful with your firstborn children, be very, very careful, because it's the pressures that we put on them, it's a lot. And they are the ones that come to see me with anxiety this time of the year, especially, with anxiety, with depression, or with sudden changes in personality. Make sure that your child is living for them, for the way God intended them to be, and not living out your unfinished dreams,
Absolutely. That was a good one. So really being present and really listening too, because by the time we get to that point of all of a sudden this happened, they've probably been trying to communicate to you years before through one way or the other, but we're just not listening. So I think being present and just being open and available to your kids is really important, and listening, because we don't listen. I know I keep coming back to listening because I hear that a lot. It's just like, and when they communicate, they may not tell you, oh, I have this problem. It could just be a statement.
Yes.
It could be a statement. I will give an example. My daughter last night, she wanted me to be at her event. It was at the same time I had a meeting. She knew that, but she asked me at least 3 times, are you going to be there? Are you going to be there? Are you going to be there? She never once said, I need for you to be there. But just that her asking multiple times is like, okay, you really want me to be there. So I will be there for you regardless of what. So it's just like their way of communicating may be different. So it's just really looking and understanding your child's way of communicating and really being there for them.
Yeah, it's that emotional attunement, isn't it? As parents, then we need to make sure that we begin to normalize parents having support as well, because we want to do the best for our children. But if we don't have the support to do so, we need to be able to. And if our children see us asking for support, if our children see us owning up to our own mistakes, if our children are able to see us being emotionally vulnerable, I'm not saying to dump on our children, but to see us, hurt or angry, and all those emotions that we stifle down, it enables them to be able to do the same. If they see you asking for support, they can come to you and say, Mom, I need support with this, you know. But I say the most important thing as well, I know we're in the thick of exams. I've said this to the parents of the children I'm working with. The teenagers, they know they have exams. They know they need to study. If they need, ask them if they need help. If they say no, leave it.
Yes.
Help them, but the pressure they're receiving right now is a lot. And your child is not going to be any better or worse of an individual because of those exam results. So I say to them, don't risk the relationship you have with your child because of these exams. It's not worth it, because no matter what happens, God has a plan for that child. And you want to make sure that at the end of the day, your relationship with your child is intact.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bibi. And
Okay.
tell us, where can people find you? If someone is really interested in working with you, where can people find you?
My website, restoretolove.co.uk. You can find me.
Uh,
All the information is there. And obviously
uh,
Instagram, which I'm here on already.
right. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing.
Thank
And we'll
you.
talk to you soon.
Thank you. All the best. Thanks for having me on. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.